Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Brightworks. Today, taking a look at Bismuth Valley. You guys know I love this map. We've got these brilliant start positions here, all in the front lines, except for Redfish. Scratch that. Typically, we have everyone on the front lines. Looks like Redfish deciding to grace Covert with a backline position here. Anyway, let's look at this side of the map. Here's a better example of the all front lines position we usually see on this game here. I guess we're going to continue play, usually in these games when somebody is unpositioned correct, or positioned incorrectly, I should say. Typically people will, they'll complain quite a lot. Looks like there might have been a little bit of that. A lot of drawing that happened before this match I had to erase. Some of it quite graphic. A lot of parts that I need to censor out. Zhao Xin is moving forward here. We're only on 2 metal extractors. What? There's something funky going on with the red team here, so I guess we'll just have to keep our eyes on it. But speaking of teams, why don't we meet our teams? In the western side here, the red team, our red leader, Asti. Or Asti? Not sure how they would like to have that pronounced. We'll call you Asti, though. Asti Martin, it's kind of what it reminds me of. The Aston Martin, very nice car. Going for a bot lab here on Bismuth Valley. I do like the bot lab, I think that's wonderful. We do see some ticks pumped out by Megatron. Definitely more than meets the eyes. Those ticks can do a ton of damage in the early game, and I'm not sure if those ticks came out before this grunt here for Griff, but let's call it a tie between those two players for getting a unit out on the field. Might have been their blue player spawning here on the eastern side, EMK POBH, or POBB. EMK Pob? Emic Pob? Huh. I don't know what to call you. Your name does not fit within my American dialect, unfortunately, so we'll call you Pob, because that's the only part of that I think I can pronounce without tremendously butchering beyond any form of recognition here. Our blue player, Pob, going to be pushing forward, going for a vehicle lab here right off the get-go. We have some blitzes rolling out and hitting the battlefield, and I absolutely love to see it. Down here on the flatlands, that is absolutely a great idea. These vehicles can get tremendous amount of work done. They have no penalties whatsoever down here, traversing this very, very flat, very open terrain, so I think vehicle lab makes a whole lot of sense. The ticks have made it through, and they're going to start harassing down some of these units over here. They're actually enough to swarm a grunt there. Usually we don't see that, but there was 5 of them produced now, and that is definitely going to be more than enough. There's more running through here. They find a commander, though, and the commander is probably going to be able to take care of them pretty quickly. Indeed, it will. And these ticks have continued to run through, and they're going to keep scouting this back area. They're also going to start tearing down whatever they can find. Get a windmill. A couple of them blow up with the windmill, unfortunately. Love to see these split. Looks like we're splitting the APM here between controlling the ticks and controlling our own forces back at home base. That's always a trade-off that you have to be aware of, right? Is how much do you spend in actions per minute controlling your offensive units versus microwing back at home, and Megatron doing an excellent job of making sure to send a constructor back here, send a constructor forward, move the commander forward, doing an excellent job on that front. Asti also doing a great job of moving units forward and securing this central lane. This is really important, and if you can get a lead right here in this center area, kind of draw what I'm talking about here. If you get a control over this area, especially these metal extractors here, this kind of looks like a character. Do 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 do. Anyway, somebody is going to get that reference and they're going to be really upset with me. Getting control of this area is really, really important here because that is quite a lot of metal. If we actually take a look at the metal extractor values, whoops, that's the wrong key. There's the one. 2.8 metal for all of these ones right down the middle of the map. You can see here just how important controlling this area is. So it's much more important to deny the enemy these metal extractors than it is to fortify your own. So I think what Drewski is doing here is probably slightly inefficient. I would love to see maybe put a laser turret here, get the metal extractor, and then push forward and put a laser turret somewhere right around here so that they can't get a metal extractor down on this spot without at least incurring the wrath, the laser-bidden wrath of your fire. This is also an interesting spot on this map. I really like playing this lane, actually, the sort of southern lane here. It's got this overpass, and it doesn't look like it. It's kind of confusing the way the map is laid out, but you can actually walk and drive units up this little hill here and down the other side, which is usually a part that's kind of neglected here, as you can see with Enigma and Lukovsky. What is that flag? I've never seen that flag before. Is that Swiss? That might be a Swiss flag. Interesting. Lukovsky or Lukovsky, however that's pronounced there, securing a nice little lead, but forgetting to take the metal extractor, which is going to cost them quite a bit, actually. This metal extractor is very important. I think I'd like to see them take that as quickly as possible. 2.8 metal, it's definitely worth quite a lot. This lane actually has a lot of those metal extractors. You can see this one back here is 2.8 as well. This one's 2.8. They have a lot of these here and there, which are really important to get. Drewski making sure to secure these metal extractors also. But their counterpart here, Covert, has had them for quite a long time. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it does eventually add up to a really, really important amount of metal that you're going to have here. Asti making sure to claim these metal extractors real quick. Very nicely done. Sometimes in this map what you see is two players go for this middle area, and then one player just holds on the top line. They just try and defend as long as possible. Sometimes what you see is a single player down here like we have now, and two players from each team up north. I couldn't say which one exactly is the better option, per se, but I think I definitely find it more interesting when there are two players down here and one player up on this side. Either way, it is fun to see these armies clash up here, though, because it does mean that we're going to have a lot of aggression. That's always fun to see. Aggravators versus Rocketeers here, as we see Megatron pushing forward, transforming these front lines to their will. See how many Transformer puns I can make. Haven't even watched a Transformer movie in, God, I don't know, forever. Is Megatron even a villain anymore? Didn't he die like 6 times or something? I don't know. I know that the last one I watched, there was like a dragon at one point. And then, oh no, the last one I watched was the Bumblebee movie. Yeah, that was actually pretty good. It was a little weird. There was that part where Bumblebee was apparently like, he was like part of World War I or something. It was just like, that was interesting. Didn't see that one coming. Yeah, it was a pretty good movie overall, I thought, though. I don't know, I kind of lost my interest in those movies as soon as they got rid of Sam Witwicky. I love that name, and I still love it to this day. I'm getting real close to the mic here, and I whisper it to you. Witwicky. Ah, what a perfect syllablic name right there. Syllablic? I don't know. I love these little fights, though, these early skirmishes that really matter a whole lot. We have thugs versus maces. The thugs are generally going to win this battle. I believe the thug is a little bit less expensive. 140 versus 130. So they're a little more expensive, actually. What's the energy cost on those? 11,050 versus 1,300. So they're a little bit more expensive in metal, a little bit less expensive in energy, which is quite interesting. But it won't matter if the aggravators can just tear everything down from a long range. At this point, Asti and Clutch have both built up their defensive lines here, but Asti has already got a gauntlet almost completely finished. Really, really quick gauntlet. I typically am not a huge fan of these, but just the fact that basically all of the resources here have been poured into building this gauntlet, I guess it's going to make this very nice. It's going to give it enough time to get value out of itself. And that's really the problem with these gauntlets, is a lot of times they aren't up quick enough to really get their value up. But there's a lot of metal on this map, so I think it's definitely going to be possible that this gauntlet can do quite a lot of work. Indeed, shelling away at these aggravators, definitely quite aggravating indeed. They're going to be unhappy about that because, of course, they hinge on being able to get reliable, consistent damage output, and they cannot do that with the gauntlets shelling away at them. The radar jammer comes up as well, so now Clutch 31 has absolutely no idea what's going on over there, other than the fact that they are receiving shell fire from out of the mist of war. Covert in a little bit of trouble here, some blitzes pushing forward, but they're not split whatsoever, and they just get de-gunned into oblivion. Yeah, that is not great. Could have been a commander kill there, but instead it was mostly just a waste of metal. Really unfortunate to see. We do have a lot more coming up on the back of this, though, so we might be able to see that happen again if they really want to dive on this. I'm not sure how worth it it's going to be, though. We already see agitators coming up, and the agitators, you know, true to their name, they're very agitating. They fire a pretty reasonably sized AoE plasma projectile, and wherever it lands, it rots destruction. Very, very powerful defense. I think My opinion has slightly changed about the Agitator. I think it's definitely much more worth it than the Gauntlet is. I think the Gauntlet is much less worth the metal that you put into it, but I think the Agitator can definitely be very powerful in specific strategic circumstances here. Wow, look at this turtleage here. We have tons and tons of walls around this metal extractor. Absolutely certain not to to leave that exposed. We've got a counter wall here by Phantom X Energy. We're really going for the trench warfare here. That's something else. This area is walled off as well. But little does Lukovsky understand that this northern region can be completely shelled. Our units are patrolling back and forth here, but they're also being shelled by artillery from these Wolverines down here as well. There's a few I can't see. I think Lukovsky has now figured out that the bots can actually traverse up here. But it's a little bit too late. I mean, there's a huge army for Orange. We've already got the forward vehicle lab. We've got the bot labs behind, producing units here. And there's tons of walls to stop this push. So I guess that will slow this down quite heavily. But it does mean that this team is at a little bit of a disadvantage because, of course, this metal extractor is lost, which is going to hurt their economy eventually here. Wow, the blue team is pushed through really quickly up north, though. We have a few grunts pushing through here. Gonna get into the backline economy of Dig Bick Dill. Yeah, let's make sure to enunciate that one every time. Just got to remind myself really quickly, make sure I'm really pronunciating every single piece of that name. I got to be very careful when I call that player out. And we might just call that one the White Salmon player. We have Bob here pushing forward with a bunch of these medium tanks, and they're doing pretty good work. Commander is right in the middle of all this. It has to uncloak as it moves around and uses up all of its energy. Has 18% health left for Zhao Xin's commander, but it does not go down. The Blitz is here also posturing, trying to be threatening. Make sure that their presence is well known. We have a counter Blitz force here. And I think I would like to see these jumping on top of these agitators. There's now 2 of them out, which is going to be really difficult to push into, especially with the standing army here as well. But they will be brave. They will push forward, and the commander is right next to all of it, so they actually managed to snipe it all with a single commander. Oh, there was 2 commanders here. There's actually a 2-for-1 commander kill. Very nicely done. We see Covert and Zhao Xin's commander both going down at the exact same time because they were standing right next to each other when the blitzes jumped on top of them. And that is all of this static defense completely down the drain. That was like 2,600 metal, I believe, for those agitators. Very, very expensive for all that to go down the drain at the cost of just a couple of blitzes here. T1 medium tanks are pushing through as well, and they're going to start trying to get through to the back lines here. There is a beamer out to try and slowly whittle down these tanks, but it's not going to do much before they continue pushing onward. Drewski pushing forward to claim these commanders. Absolutely the right move here. Use that advantage while you've got it. Excellent play there. Really excellent play. What a phenomenal snipe. At this point, there's tons and tons of these thugs marching forward. They're actually going to be attacking Asti from the back. No, okay, they decide to pull out. They realize there's actually quite a lot of static defense here. It would be unwise to continue pushing forward there, and decide instead to just fall backwards and retreat up the hill. Take the advantage that they've got. Dig Bick Dill has been rebuilding from the ashes here. It looks like a lot of this was destroyed. But luckily we do have some construction workers out. We could probably see some resbots out as well if we wanted to, but honestly I think at this point just get your metal extractors back up and running. Yeah, we can't really produce units right now, so we really got to rely on our teammate to keep the line here, but the teammate is not in that great a position either. We're still on T1 for both Megatron and Mr. Dill here. So not a good situation for the red team up north. South is a little more contentious. I mean, we have turtled this area significantly. Like, there's no way that anything short of T2 is going to break through this at this point. Besides, you know, a full-fledged ambush, but that would be extremely costly. Middle is falling rapidly as well, though, and that's tons and tons and tons and tons of metal being sent back to the team every single second that this commander is out here reclaiming. So I really, really especially like this position here for Drewski. Production facility is all the way in the back line here, and we are building Mostly energy. We're building up those energy producers. We are eating, or we're sucking up a whole ton of metal though, which is, I mean, it's very nice. Any overflow is just going to go back to the team, and the whole team is going to succeed a whole lot more. There are some arbiters out here on the front line, and those have started slowly whittling down at the front lines here. In fact, they have completely whittled down the front lines. Those gauntlets have both been taken down. Love to see some reclaim on any of those. That would be quite nice. And yeah, this front line has suddenly evaporated for Asti. Asti also in a bit of trouble from the north now, as this entire front line has completely concaved in on itself. It's been bonked over the head, and all that remains for that player. Oh, the player taps out. All that remained for that player was these res bots, which are now just empty, soulless res bots, following out the last hard-coded commands that they were given before death. Truly, these machines will march until destroyed, and there's nothing that can stop them from their divine purpose. Beautiful, if not horrifying. We see some light craft being produced here now, some rascals. Very nice to see. They have a little spatula on the front of their car. Very interesting. It's for shoveling the metal out of their way from the battlefields that they trudge through. A lot of T1 medium tanks still being produced here by Drewski. I'm expecting a tech transition. That's why I keep switching back to this perspective and wondering when are we going to see T2 units brought out on the field, because that's really the only way that we're going to break through this. I think we have substantial enough in army, and we can start building T2 anytime we'd like, and it's going to be really, really effective. Isn't really necessary, though. I mean, basically all we have to do is hold the front lines here. Commander did go down, Enigma's commander, that is. I'm not sure exactly what took it down, but there was plenty of army over here to explain how it could have gone down. Likely some sort of snipe there. But there's still plenty of army for Enigma, and it is actually going to start pushing through. Lukovsky is in quite a bit of trouble here. We don't see any reclaim, which is really how we should be funding a lot of this production. Yeah, we don't have any grave robbers. We don't have any construction bots or vehicles. So yeah, this army is drastically underfunded here. Also under build powered, right? There's no construction turrets or anything up here. We actually have the material. We just do not have the build power at the moment. Quite unfortunate, but the northern side is caving fast, and so we'll have to see if they can hold against this assault, or whether this will be the sweep of Bismuth Valley. There are some fiends pushing forward here. That's a lot of hounds. The hounds are definitely a decent option against the fiends. More difficult for them to hit the fiends when they're in their plasma mode. When they switch to that Gauss mode, it's a little bit easier for them to hit their shots. So I think I'd like to see that, just as a minor critique over a otherwise relatively successful hold there. Eventually, the units from Dark Green are actually going to be able to mop up any of Enigma's units. Is Enigma going for a tech transition here? We do have a T2 constructor out. I don't know where that came from. It looks like we have a Twitcher out here to build these fiends, so that's quite nice. It's always good practice if you're playing Cortex to hand out those Twitchers to your teammates. A T2 constructor and a Twitcher can definitely get your teammates well into the T2 levels before they even ever have to build a T2 lab. So that is quite nice to see. For Armada, it's vehicles. You have to get a T2 vehicle out in the console, sort of to provide the same effect, same strategic effect anyway. And we do see some blue units have broken through to the lines, broken through the front lines rather, to the rear end. And they're slowly taking down this base. It's being held up by a bunch of construction turrets, but those eventually will fall. And I think the front line is broken here for the red team. A bunch of fiends trying to mop up this mess, but the forward production facilities for Enigma have been blasted through by a lot of these forces. I'm not sure if they were resurrected or just produced, but there is tons of metal here. Let's take a look here. If we just look at this metal, I mean, this is a pretty huge circle, but yeah, almost 7,000, depending on how far out you go. 6,000 to 7,000 metal here. And, I mean, even if we just look at this localized little group here, almost 2,000 metal in that. 2,000 metal over here. Yeah, that's enough reclaim to fund a full tech transition, if not just a huge spam of T1 units. So I think that would be something I would love to see here. Asti moving forward to try and stop this push. For what it's worth, taking out a substantial chunk of that army. So that is quite nice. A lot of riot tanks pushing forward here. Not an ideal siege unit. Not great for pushing into bases. They're much, much better on defense. But that being said, of course, they are still very powerful whenever they can land their shots. It's just that they're outranged by a whole lot of stuff, which can cause a lot of problems. Hounds moving in on Sheldons. That's never really a great trade because the Hounds cannot outpace the Sheldons or outrange them. So theoretically, the Sheldons can just infinitely kite the Hounds rather, and make them die. Simple as that. Yeah, they can take him down pretty easily, which of course makes for a difficult trade. Now this is a bit of a weird position here because we've broken through this front line, and we now have our units on the other side of this front line where all this metal is that you'd love to eat up, but there's still this massive defensive position here. So I think what we do is we ignore this and we just push in from both sides. We kind of pincer maneuver, and we cut off this player here, come in from both of these angles. This player is locked in right here, and then you just have a direct path back to this base. Of course, pushing through in this direction and then all the way to the back of the enemy line is also a valid strategy. This northern line has been held fairly decently. We do see a whole bunch of Centurions mixed in with some maces, and I even see some Rocketeers in there. The riot tanks, the Pounders, were given new circuit boards, new brainial chips, new cochlear implants, new everything. And now they are working for the yellow team. Some turncoats, if you will. Not really turncoats, is it? It's more like a transplant. Not sure how the robots feel about that. We do have a few units here trying to push forward, do a little bit of damage, and for what it's worth, they actually did a pretty good job. Looks like this was a fairly substantial assault, and they did burn down quite a lot of these static defenses here. There's a lot of Sheldons to help out with this, though, so that is quite nice. At this point, what's the late game plan here? I happen to notice that a lot of these metal extractors here from Lukovsky are not taken at all. They were never rebuilt, which is a huge problem. This is a ton of economy that's been completely stripped off of their production here. That being said, we're not even able to spend the metal that we do have, so we actually aren't even stalling on metal or energy. We just can't spend it quick enough. So I'd love to see some more construction turrets put up. I would love to see some more... Oh, okay, yeah, we're actually working on that right here. Wonderful. We've got the construction turrets coming up. We've got the TT lab out. I think this is going to be phenomenal. We start upgrading all these metal extractors, and Lukovsky is going to be in a very phenomenal position. I don't know if it'll matter, though. I think it might be just a little bit too slow because the team has already broken so many of the front lines here. The metal disadvantage from having pushed back both of these players, well, there's now a complete missing player up here on the northern side, right? So we're down a player on the north, and this player has been pushed back to almost 3 metal extractors. 3 metal extractor economy, which is not great. They are finally on a T2 lab, which is better. They're gonna have a slightly more efficient army, which is always nice. But it's not. It might not be enough on its own with the economy imbalance here. Sheldons versus lightning tanks. I think I'm gonna give it to the Sheldons for their numbers almost entirely here. The Sheldon fire, when it's concentrated, can be extremely devastating. It's the fact that they can walk backwards while they're shooting, which allows them to kite a whole lot of these units completely, like, just forever. Like, they're not going to burn down these tanks very quickly, but the tanks can't catch up to them very quickly either, so it sort of becomes this, like, stalling match where you're trying to catch the Sheldons, and the Sheldons are constantly backing away from you as you're pushing into them. So difficult to deal with that. I think probably the best option is to either EMP them and then jump on top of those units whenever you can. A single rascal has made it through here. The gunslinger takes aim. The aim is true, and he blasts it down. Very nicely done. A single bull has has broken through, rather. It brought down as well by the gunslinger. Gunslinger with, oh, I guess it didn't get the final hit there. I would say it has 2 kills to its name, but maybe that's somebody else disagrees with me. Centurions here holding the line against the Fiends. Centurions, I've said this before, they're actually not a terrible counter against Fiends. You just have to make sure that they're spread out. But of course, in a choke point like this, you can't really get the kind of spread out positional advantageous. What am I trying to say? You can't get the advantageous positionality that you normally would be able to in a big open field. Gosh, that was a tongue twister. Really had to think about my words there before I should have spoke. But get so excited, I just got to speak anyway. Fat Boy is out here, and those absolutely melt away any of these Sheldons. Yep, you can see I mean, that shot alone took 5 of them off the field, so really good decision to bring that out onto the field. I think I quite like that. The sumos are going to be a little bit harder to deal with here. Snipers or some sort of a tank might be a little bit better of an option. But the Fat Boy is not terrible. It just is going to be prone to being flanked as these sumos continue to push forward here. think eventually those sumos are going to burst down this fat boy quite nicely. I hear laser fire over here. Looks like we were trying to push through, and it did not go well. A lot of these tanks got burned down, and that's actually going to tilt it in the red team's favor. A couple of fiends, a breakaway group of fiends here, trying to sneak around and do a little bit of damage. Looks like red has spotted them based on the interesting banana-shaped drawing they put on the map here. The fiends are moving forward. They get spotted by a dragon's claw, the lightning turret. Of course, it's blown up by the fiends. Very, very high damage unit, so they're able to deal with that quite quickly. I think one of the things that a lot of people underestimated about the fiends is that they self-destruct when they die, which does do damage in a circle, so you shouldn't clump them if at all possible. But it also means that there's no wreckage for you to reclaim after the fiend explodes, making them an extremely, extremely valuable raiding unit, because there's nothing for the enemy to pick back up and send back in your face. So it's kind of an interesting tactical decision, right? You strap like a self-destruct charge onto your units so that you don't surrender them to the enemy without having to micro it. It's very, very nice. Interesting. We do have some termites, the heat ray spiders. Interesting that we distinguish in this game between a heat ray and a laser, because I think those would basically be the same thing, right? I mean, they would just be different frequencies, different wavelengths of light. Not so sure. Different electromagnetic wavelengths, I believe. But hey, I'm no scientist. I'm just a guy with a microphone. So many Sheldons firing, and God, that might just be my most favorite sight in this entire game. The Sheldon Waterfall. Look at these bad boys march. I think that's probably my other favorite thing about this game is the formations that you can put your units into pretty easily. You can absolutely spread them in a very wonderful pattern. You can make these super, super satisfying lines of infantry that just march onward. Look at this beautiful formation. So these guys raise their arms to fire on the enemy. Very, very nice. On a grander scale, things are looking more and more dire for the red team. Unfortunately for them, and a note of good mark for the blue team, we are continuing to scale our economies, so we're up to 2 fusion reactors, starting a nuclear launcher. That's kind of interesting. Well, yeah, it looks like the economies for all of these players are still scaling upwards, which is very nice to see. I noticed that blue still has a lot of these advanced solar panels around. Much, much better than the T1 solar panels, but don't forget, it's just as efficient to take these down to build fusion reactors as it is to take down T1 solar panels to build these. So always keep that in the back of your mind. These are sort of like a metal bank. Someone posted, they posted a comment about that in the comment section of one of the videos, talking about how you can sort of think of T1 solar panels as sort of like a bank of metal, which I suppose is a fair enough point. I just think a lot of people tend to forget about that bank of metal, and suddenly in the late game you have this kind of a situation here. You have 4,500 metal worth of nothing, worth of solar panels that are producing. I mean, whoa, not what I meant to do there. Just trying to clear away some of these so I can get an accurate reading here. Well, that didn't work at all, did it? Just get a little closer. 500 energy production for the cost of 2 fusion reactors. I complain about that enough, but I won't stop until I see that habit broken. It's just that important. Yellow's base has been completely overrun at this point. The Sheldon have torn apart all of the production facilities, and the very last of their fiends are marching out on the field, trying to tear down as many of these Sheldon as they can before the push goes any further. Green has just as many Sheldon, in fact much more, and those are retreating successfully, so still I think this push will continue onwards. Now these termite spiders have gone on the offensive here, and they are going to start pushing forward, but they are definitely less than an ideal counter for these hounds that are marching inwards. The hounds that just do so much concentrated damage, and because they're not direct fire, they can sort of lob their projectile. It means that they don't have to be spread out in an effective concave in order to hit the enemy here. They just have to lob their shot and hope that it hits, which in and of itself is its own tactical problem to deal with, but it's much less so one of micro and much more so one of randomness. So I think I like the hound composition quite a bit more. At least in this specific case here. Quite a lot of gunslingers out here. We don't usually see these massed in huge numbers like this. Typically these are reserved for early game shenanigans when you want to harass a base, harass that early T1 units. They're not bad though. There is a little bit of impulse on their attacks, so it actually stuns enemies when it hits them. You can sort of see it there, kind of blasting them backwards. They're also not bad because you do get a little bit of value out of them for the fact that they can regenerate really quickly. So as long as they're not in combat, they're gonna be regenerating that health very nicely. I mean, technically they regenerate in combat as well. But yeah, you can certainly get quite a lot of value out of these. You just have to put them into fights and then back them off, and then, you know, push forward, back off, push forward, back off. So they can definitely be pretty valuable. I do like to see it. We just don't see them very often either, so always nice to see new units brought out on the field. There's quite a variety of units in this game. One of the nicer things about it. Dragon's Claw here, putting in some work to shut down these fiends, but they don't like that, and they manage to burn it to the ground. And they're going to start going after this economy here. 1 slip spy, 2 slip spy, 3 slip spy, and eventually they've all slipped by, and your base is ravaged from the inside out. Unfortunately for yellow, it's just there's nothing left. We don't have production up and running. We have a single construction turret to our name, and the last of our units are our fiends on the front lines. Are our fiends. Man, English, what a language. I hear horror stories about people learning English, and every time I encounter a word like that, I just completely understand. There's a lot of medium tanks that are just sitting in the red backline here. These are blue team tanks just sitting in the red backline, and yeah, they're just hanging out. They're just vibing. These ones are on guard. They're ready to start shooting, but yeah, they just have lost all interest. More than likely, though, Remda, our player, the lime green player here, has just forgotten that those tanks pushed through there and probably didn't even expect them to make it that far. But at this point, you can see that what this battle has essentially devolved into is the southern side holding while the northern side collapses in on these positions. Not a bad spot to be in. It usually feels a whole lot better to be the player that's collapsing than the player that's holding. This can feel quite dire at times. But definitely it is a worthwhile strategy here. Shiva are marching forward though, and those can be quite devastating. We do see the snipers out, but those Shiva, I mean, look how clustered all these units are. Every time one of these Shiva rockets hits, it's doing so much damage. Every one of their missiles, yeah, just really unfortunate the position that we decided to post up in. Gonna unfortunately mean that a lot of these units take damage when otherwise, if microed properly, they definitely wouldn't have. Would have been much more effective here. The Shiva are driven back a little ways by these units pushing forward, but they've done their damage, and this composition is now melted away quite substantially here. Lukowski has finally teched up to T2, and a nuke lands here to blow away most of the supporting role units here. Just a few scuffed up Shiva, followed by some of these, what are these spider bots called? Karganeth, that's right. Karganeth, I believe that's what the Juggernauts used to be called in an old version of this game. But they switched the name to the Rocket Spider. I think probably for the better. These definitely look more like a Karganeth. If someone said Karganeth, I would probably picture something closer to this than the Juggernaut. Either way now, Redfish, Zhaojin, and Soul Hunter are the only players remaining in this match. Anti-nukes are up, and I think the blue team does not expect that these anti-nukes are not already prepared, so the nukes aren't flying into the bases when they well could. Redfish trying desperately to hold this all together. Our tan player here decides to tap out. And so these bots carry on without a soul. And indeed, the blue team is crushing on in. Soul Hunter now finally has the T3 units out on the field and doesn't want to give them up. It took so long to build them. I can understand that feeling. You finally get to T3 and you look back at your team and you see that you're the last man standing. It hurts pretty bad. It is a pretty sad feeling, I have to say. For some reason, we're spamming out T1 constructors, and I'm not really sure why. Very interesting. A lot of decisions made this game, and you get to be the decide of whether they were good or bad. I'm just here to highlight them and give you my thoughts on them. Something I hope a lot of people understand about when I commentate this game. I'm not the definitive expert. I'm just one guy giving one opinion about how I think this game should be played. And I like to support a lot of what I say with, the numbers. That's why I gripe so much about the the T1 solar panels, because it's a very easy thing to see how inefficient those are. It's not, you know, it's not some advanced calculation, which is why why someone like me can can figure that out pretty easily. I just don't want to see anybody falling prey to the allure of the T1 solar panel. Do not trust the unlimited energy, for it extracts a heavy cost. Yeah, the blue team has swept through here, and I think it will not be long before they crush the entire rest of the red team. Anti-nuke was charged in time, luckily here for Soul Hunter, as a nuke targets their main facility. That being said, that anti-nuke specifically is no longer charged, but there is another one in Redfish's base. A base which is now being invaded by a whole lot of fiends. Yes, destroy the T1 Solar. Destroy it all. Burn it to the ground. All 4,030 metal of it. Tearing it all apart. Very nicely done by the blue team. Excellent positioning and excellent concaving here on the northern half of the map, making sure to extract exactly as much value as possible out of every single unit that was produced up in this northern section. Denying a lot of the economy there was really important. Also a big kudos to holding off the orange assault here on the bottom. Things got pretty dire there for a second, but luckily we did manage to stabilize, so it was very nicely done. Purple's grunts overwhelm everything, and they just keep pushing forward here, as most of these become multiple star generals for shooting at metal extractors and such. It's funny, I think the units gain experience based on the value of the thing that they shoot at. There's some factor. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know there's some factor because grunts level up a whole lot quicker when they're shooting at an advanced fusion reactor or something like that, as opposed to when they're just shooting at other grunts, which is pretty interesting. Shadhunter, the very last commander here. Ironically, you can kind of see where it is. It's giving up its invisibility because it was being repaired there, so you could actually see where it was at. Yeah, deciding too fast. Did I say Shadhunter? Sorry about that. Soul Hunter, the last commander here. Fighting to the very last. Says GG in chat. Calls it out. Haven't surrendered yet, though, which is interesting. Down goes the commander, and our blue team secures victory, taking over the northern sector of the map and sweeping down from below. Valiant defenses from the right-hand side. If you like more content like this, feel free to subscribe down below. We're rapidly approaching 1,000 subs, and it means a world of love to me, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, you, right there behind this screen on your phone or computer or wherever else you're watching from. I hope you have a tremendous rest of your day.